I've just returned from attending a 3-day conference in the Gold Coast of Australia on adaptation science. It was held from the 29th of June to the 2nd of July 2010. And it was a very impressive conference with over 1,000 participants, mainly from Australia, but lots of them from other countries as well, many other developing countries. A lot of activities happening on adaptation in Australia, very impressive. In research institutes and universities, a lot of postgraduate, masters and PhD students, many of them from developing countries, studying in Australia on adaptation. And it's now being seen as the first major international conference on adaptation science, and the possibility is that this will become a regular conference, with the next one being maybe in the United States sometime next year. One of the impressive things is the fact that there's a lot more research and interest from researchers in developed countries now growing on adaptation science, particularly Australia, but other developed countries in Europe and North America also beginning to do a lot more research on this. At the same time, in the developing countries, what we have seen is a lot more activities on adaptation, planning, for example, the National Adaptation Plans of Action in the least developed countries, community-based activities, for example, through the community-based adaptation activities and the various conferences that have been held. But the activities that are taking place in the developing world don't seem to be connected very well to the research community in the developed countries, and that's a major opportunity that we have ahead of us, to link researchers from developed countries who are beginning to have an interest in researching adaptation with development planners, actors on adaptation in developing countries who are also doing things on adaptation, but are not necessarily researchers or publishing in research journals. Because the knowledge on adaptation is going to have to be created jointly by researchers who do research, as well as planners and actors or practitioners who do activities on the ground. And our knowledge of what works and what doesn't work and how to spread it and scale it up is going to have to come from researchers collaborating effectively, or more effectively than they have in the past, with such planners and practitioners in developing countries, if we're going to learn how to do adaptation as quickly as possible. So one of the opportunities going forward is to develop more collaboration between researchers from developed countries, particularly young researchers who are doing postgraduate degrees, PhDs or master's degrees with dissertations involved in them, and matching them up with practitioners in developing countries at the community level, and also planners at the national and sectoral level. And that's something that we are going to be exploring as we go forward.